Jane Eyre, 1847, by Charlotte Brontë is a classic coming-of-age novel that blends romance, gothic elements, and social criticism. It tells the story of Jane Eyre, an orphaned girl who faces hardship, isolation, and personal struggles, but ultimately finds love and independence on her own terms. The novel is notable for its strong, self-reliant female protagonist and its exploration of social class, morality, and gender. Main plot summary. 1. Jane's childhood at Gateshead. 2. Life at Lowood School. 3. Thornfield Hall and Mr. Rochester. 4. The revelation and Jane's departure. 5. Life with the Rivers family. 6. Return to Mr. Rochester. 1. Jane's childhood at Gateshead. Jane Eyre is introduced as an orphan living with her cruel aunt Mrs. Reed and her cousins at Gateshead Hall. She is treated harshly, especially by her cousin John Reed and Mrs. Reed, who resents Jane. After a traumatic incident, Jane is sent away to Lowood School, a strict charity institution for orphaned girls. 2. Life at Lowood School. At Lowood, Jane suffers under the severe conditions imposed by the headmaster, Mr. Brocklehurst, who mistreats the students in the name of religious piety. However, she befriends a kind girl, Helen Burns, who teaches Jane patience and resilience, and she receives guidance from the caring teacher Miss Temple. Tragedy strikes when Helen dies from illness, but Jane's experience at Lowood strengthens her character. After finishing her studies, Jane remains at Lowood as a teacher for a few years. 3. Thornfield Hall and Mr. Rochester. Eager for a change, Jane becomes a governess at Thornfield Hall, where she is responsible for educating Adele Varens, a French girl under the guardianship of Mr. Edward Rochester, the mysterious and brooding master of Thornfield. Jane and Rochester develop a deep emotional connection, despite the differences in their social class and wealth. Rochester, who has a dark past, proposes to Jane, and she accepts. 4. The revelation and Jane's departure. On the day of their wedding, a shocking revelation halts the ceremony. Mr. Rochester is already married. His wife, Bertha Mason, is a mentally ill woman who is kept hidden in the attic of Thornfield under the care of a servant, Grace Poole. Rochester explains that he was deceived into marrying Bertha and has been living with the burden ever since. Heartbroken by the betrayal and unable to compromise her moral principles, Jane leaves Thornfield, despite her love for Rochester. 5. Life with the Rivers family. Jane travels far from Thornfield and is taken in by the Rivers family, Street. John Rivers and his sisters, Diana and Mary. Jane learns that she has inherited a large fortune from a deceased uncle and that the Rivers siblings are her cousins. St. John, a stern and devout clergyman, proposes to Jane, urging her to marry him and accompany him on a missionary journey to India. However, Jane realizes that she cannot marry without love and refuses his proposal. 6. Return to Mr. Rochester. Hearing a mysterious call in the night that seems to come from Rochester, Jane decides to return to Thornfield. She finds the mansion in ruins, having been destroyed by a fire set by Bertha, who perished in the blaze. Mr. Rochester, now blinded and maimed from rescuing his servants, lives in isolation. Jane reunites with him, and they reconcile. Despite Rochester's physical limitations, they marry, and their love is deepened by mutual respect and equality. The novel ends with Jane narrating that they have lived happily together, and Rochester eventually regains partial vision in one eye. Themes: independence and self-respect. Jane's journey is marked by her desire for autonomy, dignity, and equality in her relationships. She refuses to compromise her values, even for love. Love and equality. The novel emphasizes that true love is based on mutual respect and emotional equality, as shown by Jane and Rochester's relationship, which flourishes when both partners can stand as equals. Social class and gender. Brontë critiques the rigid class structure of Victorian society and explores the limited options available to women, highlighting Jane's quest for equality despite her lower social status. Morality and conscience. Jane's decisions are guided by her moral compass. She leaves Rochester after discovering his marriage, even though she loves him, because she cannot condone immorality. Religion. Religion is portrayed in different ways through characters like the hypocritical Mr. Brocklehurst, the saintly Helen Burns, and the zealous St. John Rivers. Jane strikes a balance between spiritual faith and personal happiness. Jane Eyre is renowned for its exploration of complex emotions, psychological depth, and the strength of its protagonist. Jane's fierce independence, combined with her emotional sensitivity and moral convictions, makes her a timeless heroine, and her story resonates with themes of self-discovery, empowerment, and the triumph of love.